Hello and welcome back for our final feast of the season. In this season finale, we are going to be making the Betrothal feast from The Witcher. Now this video will be broken up into 4 separate dishes. First, we are going to start with our pork roast marinade. We're going to start by peeling this garlic and then adding it to our food chopper. This is probably the easiest way to mince garlic. Give it a few chops here, get it nicely diced, and then we'll add it to our mortar and pestle. We're making this betrothal feast because 2022 is projected to be one of the biggest years for weddings at 2.6 million. Next, we're going to go ahead and grab our fancy mustard from one of our earlier videos. Be sure to go ahead and check that out with the link above. Also, make sure you guys reuse ingredients. It really cuts down the cost of your cooking as well as reducing food waste. Now that's a huge problem that we have here and is something we should try to avoid at any cost. Next, we're going to go ahead and some of this amazing gold honey. This was a part of that gift set from our very first episode, the vegan salad. All right, we're going to get this all ground together now. We're going to try to get it as smooth as possible. You can also do this in a food processor or in a small blender or NutriBullet. All those sort of things are very, very easy ways to get this mixed together and make the marinade homogeneous. Now we're going to go ahead and get our spices into the marinade. That is going to be our oregano, our ground cloves, our cumin seeds, and our caraway. Now for the caraway, you can either do seeds or pre-ground, either is fine, but for the cumin seeds, you want whole seeds. Another little tip you can do here is pre-measure all of those spices out so you can just dump them all at once, or you can mix them here, but make sure that you don't get them mixed up so you don't add too much of one ingredient. Now, as we add the cinnamon, be sure to check us out on Instagram and Twitter at DillyTheDough1. We're going to now get this all mixed up again and make sure that all of those flavors are mixed in there incredibly well. While we finish mixing this marinade, I will say I really do enjoy cooking pork for the simple reason that you can do so many different marinades and come up with amazing recipes. You can easily switch out some of these ingredients and add some more citrus, and you've got yourself a Hawaiian pig roast. We're going to go ahead and get this marinade added to our vacuum seal bag. Now guys, if you don't have a vacuum sealer, the easy fix for this is take a 1-gallon Ziploc bag, put your pork in there, add your marinade, and then submerge the bag up to the zipper in water. That'll create a vacuum in the bag, and then all you gotta do is seal it up and you're good to go. Make sure you guys don't get any water in that bag, but if you do, just make sure you mix it up real well. Now that that is bagged up, we're going to go ahead and throw it in the fridge, let it sit while we start on our potato dumpling dough. We're going to first go ahead and add our flour. Make sure to measure this as accurately as possible. Now, I'm using the knife method over a dry ingredient measuring cup, but you can also go ahead and use a baking scale. That is going to be the most accurate way. Now we're going to add our salt, our egg, our butter, and our warm water. Now you could do this as well in a food processor, but I do really recommend this part by hand. It will really help incorporate all those ingredients, allow that flour to get nicely saturated, and really start creating those glutens that you want in a nice chewy dough. Alright, through the power of movie magic, we have let the dough proof for a little bit. That is going to make sure that all of that moisture has incorporated throughout the flour, and now we're going to start kneading. This is one of the most important steps as it really creates those strands of gluten and really makes the dough spring back and chewy and amazing and wonderful and all sorts of good stuff when you finally make your dumplings. So be sure to keep kneading this. You might be tired, you might think it's ready, but it's not. You're gonna sweat, it's okay. The other little trick you can do is if you have a stand mixer like a KitchenAid, you can use the kneading hook, and the kneading hook will do fine as well. Just be careful to keep an eye out so you don't burn out your motor. Alrighty, as this is the season finale, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you guys can check out our next video. We have officially moved from Orlando to Austin, so be sure to check out next week's video for an amazing house tour. We will see you there. Alright, we're going to go ahead and form this into a nice ball shape, and we're going to keep kneading, because you thought we were done. You're never done kneading. One of the coolest things about dumplings is they are found all over the world. Guys, on our Twitch community, we stream to 26 different countries, and I believe all 26 of those countries have their own form of dumplings. If you think about it, the US, we have our chicken and dumplings. You think of gyoza when you think of Japanese dumplings. You think of soup dumplings when you come to China. And all over the world, there are different varieties. Now today, guys, this is going to be a little closer to a pierogi, but nonetheless, look at that. That is a delicious looking ball of dough. Now we're going to go ahead, put that back into our clean bowl, add a little bit of flour, and let that proof off to the side. Now that our pork has been marinating, we can go ahead and get started on cooking it. The first thing that we're going to do is make sure to get our 2 cooking pans we're going to need for this recipe out and ready. Cut open our vacuum seal bag and drop that beautifully marinated pork roast into our cooking pan. Now this is where a majority of the cooking is going to be done, so we want to scrape out as much of that marinade as possible and get it all in there so we can make an amazing glaze later on. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get some of that excess marinade off, and because we're going to be searing it, you really want to get a little bit of that extra off so you don't burn any. Now if you were doing this on a smoker or on a grill, you really would want to leave that marinade on. It would help create a nice caramelized glaze, and all you would do is either add the marinade from the vacuum seal bag or make a little extra marinade to make this extra glaze. Alright, now that we have got all of that marinade off, we are going to go ahead and get that in our hot pan and searing. Now, this is an awkward shape, so you are going to have to use your hands or maybe a pair of tongs or something like that to really rotate this around. Make sure you get a good sear on all surfaces. It's really going to help lock in that moisture and all of that amazing flavor when we go ahead and roast this off later on. Now there we go, guys. That is a true shot. That beautiful golden brown color. Now we're just going to go ahead and sear our ends off. Now guys, this is kind of an important step. You want to make sure you get a good enough sear on each side, which means if you go a little heavy on the sear, that's okay too. Be sure to check us out Sunday through Wednesday, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time on Twitch. Once those both get a good golden brown sear on each side, we're going to go ahead and cut off that cooking twine, making sure to not add that to our pot for our final roasting. Once we get all that cooking twine off, we're going to go ahead and lay this back down in our pan and crack open a beer. Now, it's not for what you think, it is for part of the recipe. Make sure to save yourself one of those, though, for afterwards. This American ale goes really, really well with this recipe. Make sure to grab that beer, some good friends, sit back and enjoy these amazing smells that are coming from our pan. Now as we go ahead and start deglazing with this amazing beer, all of those cooked on flavors from the bottom of the pan are going to start incorporating into the beer and really help when we go ahead and add this to our pork and roast it off in the oven. Now you really want to make sure to get all of those cooking scraps mixed in here before we go ahead and start cross-hatching our pork roast. This is going to give it a really nice crispy finish after we go ahead and roast it off in the oven. It's also going to allow us a wonderful little bed to start adding whole cloves into those little crosshatches. While this is roasting off, all of those juices from the pork are gonna start trying to escape and work their way out to those cloves, which is gonna add an intense amount of flavor. Now look at that close-up, guys. Next, we're gonna go ahead and give one more mix to this deglazed beer before we go ahead and add it to our pork. Now guys, make sure to grab an oven mitt because that handle is gonna be toasty. Now go ahead and pour this mixture directly over the pork. That's gonna help all those flavors seep through that cross-hatching. Now this is gonna go in the oven for about 10 minutes to sear off before we put a lid on and let it roast for the remainder of the time. Next, we're going to start working on our honey roasted carrots. This is a super simple recipe. All you're going to do is peel your carrots, cut the ends off, and that's really the hardest part. Looky here, guys, we got ourselves a little visitor. Fend absolutely loves frozen carrots, so when he hears me cutting them up, he thinks that I am making him some snacks. Unfortunately, not on this one, little guy. I'm sorry. You can clean up some of my scraps, though. Alright, next we're going to cut these off at an angle. You don't need to cut them at an angle. It just makes them look fancier. Alrighty, we're going to add those carrots to our baking pan. Next, we're going to get some salt, some pepper, make sure to season those up nicely. Next, we're going to add our honey, another version of honey from that gift set. Just drizzle that on over. You're going to use about an ounce, so about 30 milliliters, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less. Depends on your taste. If you want it a little sweeter, add more. Now we're going to put our knobs of butter in there. That's really going to help incorporate all of those flavors and give us that nice roasted consistency. Next, we are going to work on our filling for our potato dumplings. First, we're going to go ahead and peel up 5 potatoes and get them diced. Now, a rough chop here is perfectly fine, but make sure they're all about the same size, so when we put them in our pot of water, they cook evenly. As we go ahead and add our potatoes to our water, make sure that water is nicely seasoned with salt and very, very salty. Next, we're going to go ahead and finally dice up an onion. Just like all of our other episodes, make sure not to cut the bulb at the bottom, but cut the nib at the top, peel our onions, and then slice down without cutting into the bulb, and then back across, and start to dice. Now, this is typically where I would consider a rough dice, but we're going to go back through with our knife and get it a little bit finer. And look who's back, guys. We've got another Fend sighting looking for more of those snacks. Unfortunately, he didn't find them. Now, as we go ahead and get this finely diced, we're going to go ahead and set that off to the side while we heat up our pan that we had previously seared our pork in. We're going to add a little bit of neutral cooking oil in there and let that temperature come up. Now that that temperature has increased, we're gonna dump our onions in there and get them seared up. They should be translucent in color when they're finished. Make sure to just keep mixing them so they don't stick to the bottom of your pan or burn. Once those onions start to turn a little see-through, we're gonna go ahead and add our minced garlic. Now, you guys can use some of that minced garlic from earlier, or you can use minced garlic and water that you can buy from the store. Now that our potatoes are done cooking and our onions and garlic are nicely cooked, we're gonna go ahead and mash our potatoes. You'll see that I'm using a balloon whisk for this instead of a traditional potato mixer. The main reason I'm doing this is we want it to be more like a riced potato, and I don't have a ricer. So we are pushing those potatoes through the whisks to make sure that we incorporate a lot of air and that it doesn't get dense. We're gonna now go ahead, add our onions and garlic, and measure out our ricotta cheese. So with the ricotta cheese, you don't need to be as precise. It's gonna be a little creamier if you add more and a little drier if you don't add as much. I prefer to have a little bit creamier of a potato dumpling, so that's why you saw me that little extra at the end there. Now we're gonna go ahead and mix this all up, and you can see why we added that air in earlier. This is gonna help keep it from being too dense. Alrighty, now that our potato dumpling dough is proofed, look at that, guys. This is probably the most fireball of dough I have ever made. It really did come out nicely, guys. Sometimes hand-making dough can be a little bit difficult and take some practice, but with determination, you can really make something special with your own two hands. Now we're gonna go ahead and roll this out. I would not recommend doing it on a wood cutting board like this, mainly because you're gonna run out of space very quickly. As you can see, I already am. Now, the reason I say this is you wanna roll this dough out to about 1/8 of an inch. I only was able to get it out to about 1/4 of an inch. What I should have done, looking back, is cut this dough in half and roll it out in 2 separate parts. But I was stubborn and I did it this way. Now it's gonna seem like you're rolling forever because that dough continues to pull back, but that's actually a good thing. That means all of that gluten has developed and you are gonna have a really amazing final dumpling. Next, we're gonna go ahead and just use a metal cup to go ahead and cut out our dumpling shells. It makes it a lot easier and gives you a perfect circle, guys. So don't feel the need to cut these by hand. Next, you can go ahead and take that extra dough, knead it back out, roll it back out, and make a few more shells. Now, you can see after we've cut these, they kind of shrank back down a little bit. That's why I would recommend rolling them out a little bit more. We're gonna add our filling and crimp off the top ends here. I do apologize I didn't get a close-up of me crimping these, but it is a pretty easy technique once you get it down. All you're doing is folding the last little bit behind the first part. Now, if you'd like me to do a video on how to crimp dumplings like this, I can go ahead and do that. Just put a comment down below. Next, we're going to season up our water and start adding our dumplings in to cook that flour through. It'll also help incorporate all of those flavors of our filling as well as melt that ricotta cheese. Now that those are cooked, we're going to go ahead and sear the bottoms. First, we're going to go ahead and add some toasted sesame oil to the bottom of a hot pan and then start adding our dumplings in. Now, this is a really quick cooking process, so keep a close eye on these or you will burn the bottom of them. You really want to be on a medium-high temperature here, and again, keep a close eye on them. Once that sear has started, you're going to go ahead and cover the pan and let them steam the rest of the way through. Look at the bottom, make sure they're nice and crispy, and go ahead and add them to the plate. Next, we're going to get started on our baked apples. This definitely has to be one of my favorite parts of the recipe, mainly because I have an enormous sweet tooth, and good God, these were delicious. First, you're going to start by coring your apples, but not all the way through. You really just want to make sure to get the seeds out and try to get as much of that core as possible out. And then we're going to go ahead and recap these apples. Now what we're going to do is take our 2 sticks of butter here. I am using Kerrygold unsalted butter. We're going to go ahead and coat these apples. You can see with about how much in the recipe below, but really just eyeball it, make sure it's got a nice coverage. And then we'll put them on our baking sheet and throw them in the oven. Now that our pork is done cooking, we are going to go ahead and make our glaze. We're going to drain all of those liquids out of the pan into our fry pan here. Add a little bit more honey, because like I said, I like the sweetness. Once all that honey is in there, we're going to go ahead and grab our whisk and start mixing this up and reducing this down. Making sure to whisk constantly over a medium heat to really start bringing some of that liquid out and thickening up our glaze. Soon we'll be able to have it reduced down enough that we can coat the back of a spoon, run our finger through it, and it won't recombine. Next, we're going to go ahead and sieve out all of those solids from our glaze and pour this directly over our pork roast. As this sieves on through, you can see that amazing glossy color that we're getting. That is exactly what you're looking for. If you're doing this on a grill or in a smoker, go ahead and pop that back in for another 5 minutes before we get to this amazing final plating. Guys, look at how delicious that is. All we have left is to give it a bite. The pork was so juicy, the carrots were so tender, same with that baked apple, and the potato dumplings were so savory and delicious. Absolutely amazing, guys. Thanks for watching. Come join us on Twitch Sundays through Wednesdays, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Currently, we are working on some Star Wars games, and maybe that'll give you a little hint as to what the next video series is going to be. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our current activities, as well as stay connected in the Discord. All those links are below. Chests that were painted. So each of these chests will be filled with some extra special